What? What? What do you want? What do you want me to say about this cutscene that hasn't already been said by every single person that's ever watched it before? You don't need me to tell you about this cutscene. If you've seen this before, you already know. There's nothing new I can say. It's the best Sonic cutscene ever made by anyone. We all know this. There's nothing more to say about it. Really, I could probably just skip over this cutscene entirely because there's nothing to add. Like, if you haven't watched this cutscene before, go watch this cutscene. It's incredible. And if you have watched this cutscene before, you don't need me to tell you about it. But I guess my job is to talk about these kinds of things, you know, Sonic storytelling and all that, so I guess I'll just reiterate what everybody already knows about this cutscene. Yeah, this is the best piece of Sonic animation, of like visual storytelling, of filmmaking with Sonic that has ever been made ever. The animation quality here is absurdly high, even to this very day. Like, the animation totally holds up, even though the fact that it's from 2008. And I can't really think of many games outside of trailers that have big, elaborate CG cutscenes that are of this high quality and are also this long. Like, this cutscene just goes and goes and goes. It is multiple minutes of insanely high-quality animation. It is absolutely absurd. You can definitely tell that this was the biggest budget Sonic game ever. After this point in the series, things start to get a little bit more budgeted over time. You can tell that they've definitely never hit the heights of Sonic Unleashed ever again, because this cutscene just screams at you, look at how much money we spent on this game. You know, this was back before Sega had Yakuza and all that, so back in this time, Sonic was still a really big moneymaker for them, because nowadays, Sonic does not at all get this kind of treatment. I'd be surprised if we ever saw a Sonic game approach the level of production value that we see here in Sonic Unleashed ever again. But here's the thing, it's not just about the quality of the animation with this cutscene, it's also immaculately well directed. It is such an insanely well done, basically Sonic short film that you get at the beginning of this Sonic game. It is absolutely like film level quality that we're getting with this cutscene here, and that is actually a very important point to touch on because I feel that that was one of the main goals of this cutscene, was to convey what Sonic Team was trying to do with Sonic Unleashed. When you look at the game overall, and many of its storytelling concepts and ideas and how it executes them, it's very clear to me that this game is really making an active effort to be very, very cinematic, to be very filmic. This opening cutscene is really all the evidence you need, because like many people have said it, and it's absolutely true, that this feels like Sonic the Hedgehog the movie, and I think that was 100% intentional. They were really aiming to make this game feel like the big, epic Sonic movie that you would go see in theaters. That was like the vision that they had for this game. And this isn't the first time they've done this kind of thing with Sonic games in the past. If you look at a lot of the most prominent Sonic stories, a lot of them have this same kind of inspired direction with how they try to tell the story. You know, the storybook games are doing the whole motion comic thing to try to emulate the feeling of, you know, stories, as that's what those games are all about. Meanwhile, if you go to something like Sonic Battle, then it feels very almost kind of like a TV show. It's very episodic. You finish one character's story, and then you pick up at the next character's story, which continues the main story, but it also feels a bit like a contained story in and of itself. It's like you're going through the next episode of this season of this show. That's the kind of feel that they were going for with Sonic Battle's story. Sonic 06 even is very clearly trying to be like a JRPG style, like fantasy story in terms of how it's executed. That's why that game has like the realistic art style with the realistic humans. And of course Sonic Adventure 2, similarly to Unleashed, is trying to be very, very cinematic. That game also feels like Sonic the Hedgehog the movie. However, there is still a difference in execution between SA2 and Unleashed, because SA2 is very clearly trying to be like an anime movie. The storytelling and the way it's executed in Sonic Adventure 2 is very, very Japanese, and the type of story that it tells is extremely common in anime. You know, Shadow's whole deal and his character and what SA2's story is about, it's anime as fuck. Whereas with Sonic Unleashed, they have toned down the anime a little bit, not entirely, as it's still just a Japanese story, and that's kind of inherent to Japanese storytelling a little bit, but they have tried to de-emphasize those elements and are instead trying to push this game into the direction of like a Western animated movie, like a Pixar or DreamWorks kind of deal. You can especially see that looking at the art style of the humans in this game. This totally clashes with what 06 was doing with its humans, but these humans fit what this game is trying to do with its story. It's trying to feel like an animated Pixar movie, and so all the human characters kind of look like Pixar knockoffs. On top of that, there's also the animated short that they made prior to Sonic Unleashed, Night of the Werehog, which, by the way, is a cute little thing. I don't really have much to say about it. But why did they even make that in the first place? It really doesn't serve much of a purpose at all. I guess you could say it's marketing material, kind of, but it's like a full 10-minute long animation that has really nothing to do with the main game. Well, I feel like this is to try to emulate that feel of like when you go to see a Pixar movie in theaters, oftentimes they are accompanied with an animated short that plays before the movie. I think that's what they're trying to aim for here, and the whole idea of making a big, long Sonic animated short, like where do you think that came from? Obviously, with this game, they were really trying to push animation and visual storytelling with Sonic, because with this game, they were trying to make this feel like Sonic the Hedgehog the movie. And this opening cutscene does an incredibly good job of making it feel that way. Like, in my head, when you just say the words Sonic movie to me, this is exactly the kind of thing that I would imagine. Every single thing about this cutscene exudes taking what we know about Sonic the Hedgehog and the Sonic stories that we see in the games and putting that up on the big screen, where now it's bigger and more epic and more elaborate than it's ever been before, yet at the same time, it is still completely true to the series. Sonic Unleashed, and this cutscene in particular, was clearly aiming to encapsulate everything that Sonic is about in as neat and tight of a package as they possibly could in the form of this big epic movie-like story. And personally, I feel that this very heavily cinematic direction is a great thing to do with Sonic. You know, SA2, I think that's part of the reason that that story is so beloved, is not just the story itself, but also the way it's told, and Sonic Unleashed also has that benefit. You know, a good story is great and all, but the way you tell that story is just as important as the story itself. And I feel that this is something that a lot of the Sonic games after Unleashed really suffer from, because they don't have that same kind of strong, inspired method of telling their stories that a lot of the games around this time do. Even if it's not being cinematic, you know, trying to feel like a motion comic like the storybook games, or like an episodic show like Sonic Battle, or whatever, even the attempt at a JRPG style story that we see in 06. What matters is, all of these games not only tried to tell good stories, but they were also trying to tell stories in a way that was inspired, and it actually was trying to do something. Compare that to a lot of the weaker Sonic stories, like Sonic Heroes, for example, where that's just trying to be a video game story, which is perfectly fine, but it's not really something that's going to stick with people as much, and it's not really going to get as much of a story across in a kind of way that really gets people to engage with it. And that is the kind of storytelling that we have seen in every single Sonic game following Unleashed. They're just very basic video game stories. They're not trying to be Sonic the movie, or Sonic in this or that. They're just like, yeah, it's a Sonic game and here's some cutscenes, whatever. And I think that is a big part of the reason that the post-Unleashed and Black Knight Sonic stories completely fall flat for most people, because the way they tell their stories is just not nearly as engaging or as inspired as what the 2000 Sonic games were trying to do. This is the last time where we get a Sonic story told with a real vision that is attempting to do something with the way it tells its story, which is unfortunate, but at the very least, it is by far the best form of storytelling that the Sonic series has ever seen, in my opinion at least. And clearly this very cinematic story direction for Sonic has resonated with a lot of people, considering how much people love the story of Sonic Adventure 2 and how much people talk about the opening cutscene of Sonic Unleashed. this is like one of the major highlights of the game that people constantly go on about when they're talking about how great Sonic Unleashed was. And you know what? I think it's completely warranted, because I think this is a great direction for Sonic storytelling, executed absolutely perfectly, which is something very rare that I get to say about Sonic. So there you go, there was my spiel on the opening cutscene of Sonic Unleashed. Was that good enough? How did I do? Did I give it enough praise? I hope so. People have talked about this cutscene so much already, I hope I was able to offer something new to the conversation, but I've yet to talk about what actually happens in this cutscene, so let's quickly go through the plot points and then get on with the rest of the story. First of all, right off the bat, I want to say I like this opening, how we start on the planet and then pan up to all the spaceships. You know, Sonic's still wearing its Star Wars inspiration on its sleeve. I like to see that. But actually, for the rest of this cutscene, there's really not that much of, like, plot significance here. A lot of this is just, like, spectacle and fluff, which I'm not going to complain about at all because it's awesome. But one thing that is worth talking about is the way Sonic Unleashed opens, because you look at what's happening here and the way it's executed, and this feels like it could be the finale of any other Sonic game. You know, we're already in space, Eggman has this giant fleet of battleships, and Sonic is plowing his way through. He gets caught by Eggman, and then he's already got the Chaos Emeralds. He goes super, and he starts laying waste to Eggman's whole fleet here. It's like there's a whole Sonic game leading up to this game that we didn't get to play, that we don't know what happened, and I think that is a really awesome way to open up this story. Makes it feel like this is a lot bigger than just the typical Sonic stories that we've seen so far. You know, the traditional conflict of Sonic fighting Eggman and trying to stop him, getting the Chaos Emeralds, going super and saving the day. Yeah, not this time. That's just what we use to kick things off. We have a story that's much bigger than that in mind. It's very, very cool. I like that idea here, and I think it's done really, really well. Because what actually happens here is that Eggman's running away from Super Sonic, and we discover that this was all a setup by Eggman, actually, where he has this whole big machine that he traps Sonic in, and he extracts the Chaos Emeralds right out of Super Sonic. Holy shit! We've never seen anything like that before, except for from Knuckles at the beginning of Sonic 3, but whatever. Again, it feeds into that whole idea of like, oh, you thought Super Sonic was gonna fix everything? Not this time. And then Eggman uses the power of the emeralds to fire this giant laser at Earth, and it breaks the whole planet into multiple pieces, and there's this giant monster thing that comes out, and Sonic transforms into a monstrous form, and the Chaos Emeralds are all blackened, and it's like, oh my god, there's so much crazy shit going on. And it's all going exactly according to Eggman's plan. And then he's got the monstrously transformed Sonic, and he just shoots him right out of the ship by opening the window and having the air pressure take him out. And then we get a really nice shot of Sonic falling toward the Earth, and we bring up the logo of the game. These are the Japanese cutscenes, so we go with the Japanese title here, Sonic World Adventure, which personally I feel is a better title for the game. And once again, just the cinematography here is so well done with that late title shot, and, you know, the direction here is just, oh my god, it is insanely good. And then we see the big monster from before fade away and start spreading this darkness around the planet, and that is how our adventure begins. Holy shit, that is quite a bit bigger and more insane right off the bat than anything we've ever seen in a Sonic game before. And for fuck's sake, Eggman won, basically. Like, he totally managed to manipulate Sonic into doing exactly what he wanted, and then he tossed him aside like he was absolutely nothing. Like, it's not something we've ever seen before, where Eggman's plan just totally works out exactly how it was supposed to. The closest other time we've seen this is in Sonic Adventure 2. Again, a very cinematic game that's trying to make things feel bigger than they've ever been before. Sonic has lost. Eggman has won, and that's how we're beginning our story. The villain is at the top, and the hero is at the bottom. It's just so great. That said, one thing I do want to comment here is what Eggman says about how, this is exactly as the Gaia manuscript said it would be. Can I just say, this is a really, really overdone thing for the premise of various Sonic games. So many of them are kicked off with Eggman researching some ancient mystery, and then him going to exploit that mystery is what kicks off the whole adventure, and then him trying to control some giant monster thing. Like, this is stuff that we have seen time and time again in Sonic. And it's just a little bit tired at this point. Like, can we get some different ideas going on here? We had Chaos, Shadow, Solaris, all the fucking Babylon shit in the Sonic Riders games over and over and over. A story in Sonic kicks off with Eggman discovering some sort of thing and trying to get it for himself. Technically, even Sonic 1 is like that too, with Eggman trying to get the Chaos Emeralds, really. And again, Sonic Frontiers does the exact same thing. It's just like, can we try some new things with Sonic stories, please? Not a huge problem or anything, but just something I thought was worth mentioning. Anyway, let's continue on with the story. So Sonic is plummeting toward the Earth, and some sort of weird magical power slows his descent, before then cartoonishly dropping him, and then he falls and faceplants right into the dirt. Once Sonic recovers, he takes a look around, and he finds this little fella here who is unconscious, and Sonic kinda shakes him awake, where he is startled by seeing Sonic's new monstrous form, the Werehog. But it's not long before, through his concerns, Sonic shows that he's no threat to the little guy, that he starts to open up a little bit more to Sonic, thanking him for his concern and commenting about how big and scary Sonic looks right now, where Sonic now discovers that he's been transformed, and he's like, oh, this is weird. Not too surprising, with Sonic being such a go-with-the-flow kind of guy, that he's not too worked up over being transformed into a weird monster thing. Anyway, the little flying guy asks Sonic his name, and he introduces himself, and then Sonic asks in return, but this little guy does not remember who he is. He has amnesia. The last thing he remembers was something falling out of the sky, and so Sonic assumes that, oh, I must have fallen on him and hit his head, and that's why he can't remember anything. It's my fault that he has amnesia, and so naturally, of course, Sonic decides to take responsibility for this, and he's gonna help this little dude find anyone who knows him and see if he can't help him recover his memory.
Yay!
And then the sun starts to rise, and Sonic then transforms back to his normal form, completely flabbergasted at what the heck is going on. A little bit later on, these two are walking around talking about what's going on right now. You know, Sonic's weird form and the fact that the Chaos Emeralds have been turned all black. Sonic explains to his new little friend that this is his normal form, but he does not really seem too interested, as he is far more interested in the chocolate chip ice cream that this server over here is selling. And he's doing a pretty good sell, too. He's just going on and on about how he's got the best goddamn ice cream in the entire fucking world or whatever, and this little guy is just dying to have some. So he and Sonic get some cones, and then they're like, alright, once we're done with this, we have to start seriously looking for anyone that knows you, Chip. And the little guy's confused by that, and Sonic explains that, well, I gotta call you something in the meantime, so Chip, what do you think? And he absolutely loves the name. So now Sonic and Chip start looking around for anyone that might know who Chip really is. But before we move on, one thing I want to talk about this scene that's a little bit strange is the fact that, as we saw in the opening cutscene of the game, the entire planet was broken into multiple pieces, and yet no one in this game seems to give a fuck. That vendor there was just like, oh yeah, have some of my ice cream, whatever, who cares? And you talk to the NPCs in the game and all that, and they're mostly just going on with their average everyday lives. They're like, oh, it's a little inconvenient that the planet's broken up into pieces. It's like, what the fuck is wrong with you people? I mean, first of all, how is anyone fucking alive? If that happened, that would kill absolutely everyone on Earth. The earthquakes it would cause would fucking annihilate everything. Not to mention that the oceans would be falling into the Earth's core, which just doesn't happen with no explanation, and really the core of the Earth should be cooling down, which would cause a whole bunch of problems all over the place. The atmosphere would also be fucked, as the surface of the Earth was lifted way above what it normally should be. Basically, everyone should be dead right now, but it's magic, so whatever, it's all fine. And you know what? I'm perfectly okay with that. And even though it's a little bit weird that people aren't even really freaking out that much about the planet being broken up into pieces, I do think that it works pretty well for this game, but I'm going to talk about that way down the road. In the meantime, let's get back to the story. So Sonic and Chip have been looking around for anyone that might know Chip, and they were unable to find anyone, and now the sun is beginning to set, and when it completely does, Sonic transforms back into the werehog. And this is where Sonic has kind of figured things out, that okay, when it's daytime he goes back to his normal form, but when it's nighttime he turns into this thing again. And also his shoes also transform at the same time. And also when he turns back into normal Sonic, he regrows his gloves, I guess? Whatever. Anyway, Sonic and Chip run into the ice cream vendor again, who now has a very different tone than he did before. Now he's a little bit more like what you might expect from someone in this situation, going like, oh no, everything's ruined, the planet's broken apart, we're all fucked. Which, yeah, this is now addressing what I was saying before, but it's now a little bit weird that he is acting so differently than how he was before. Before, he was like, whatever, planet's broken into pieces, who cares, have some ice cream. But now, he is like the polar opposite of that. What the heck is going on here? While he is busy grieving, Chip tries to cheer him up with ice cream, but he accidentally ends up dropping it, which Sonic then manages to catch with his newly discovered stretchy arms. Clearly, one of the points of this cutscene is to introduce many of the concepts of the werehog to us all at once right here at the beginning. Why does Sonic have stretchy arms while he's a werewolf thing? Well, there's actually a reason for it that I'll talk about a little bit later. Meanwhile, somewhere nearby, we find Tails, who is being ganged up on by some mysterious creatures, and he is a little bit freaked out by this, and he ends up running and hiding from these big scary monsters, which is a thing that we'll come back to later. For now, the point is that eventually Sonic and Chip manage to find Tails, and Sonic deals with all the monsters, and then they meet up. Tails is like, whoa, Sonic, what the heck happened to you? And he's like, you know, things. And then Chip offers Tails some chocolate, which he's like, okay, sure. Anyway, Sonic fills in Tails on what's been going on, and then Tails says that he knows someone who has a little bit of an idea of what might be happening with the planet being broken up into pieces and all that. Professor Pickle, who lives in Spagonia, and Sonic's like, oh, well, that's a continent over, how are we gonna get there with the world broken up into pieces? And then Tails is like, no problem, I got my tornado here, so we'll be able to fly there no problem. And our boys do just that, where they find that Professor Pickle has been kidnapped by Eggman, and so they have to go save him. Oh yeah, and Chip is also here, and he's,
ずっと前にさらわれたんじゃきっとお腹が空いてるよお腹が空いたら死んだ方がマシだおお
Yeah, they try to make Chip the comic relief in this game, but he's not particularly funny, if you ask me. If you haven't picked up on it by this point, Chip is the hungry, character trope of all he wants to do is eat food, and he's always talking about food and how hungry he is. And it's really not very entertaining at all. As far as likable companions that Sonic has had, he's definitely a lot weaker than, say, Shara or Caliburn from the storybook games. He's just not particularly likable, I would say. Anyway, our heroes manage to break into one of Eggman's bases, where Professor Pickle is being held to go rescue him. And this is where we learn that Professor Pickle is like a doddering old man type character, which again, they try to make him funny, and he's not really very funny at all. In this scene, he just goes on about Eggman doesn't know how to make a sandwich to save his life, and blah blah blah, cucumbers, blah blah. And, he doesn't really care about the fact that he's kidnapped or his life is in danger, that the planet's broken into pieces. He just wants to go tell the chef here how to make a proper sandwich. And you're like, Okay, I guess that's technically a joke, whatever. And then Chip offers him some chocolate, and this is like a thing that Chip does, is he offers a bunch of people chocolate a lot of times. Again, it's just not really that charming or cute. There's kind of some weakness in the writing in Sonic Unleashed that is quite unfortunate, and it makes a number of things fall flat, in my opinion. But the gist of this scene is that Sonic and Tails manage to save Professor Pickle, and he tells them to get something from this vault that is conveniently 10 feet away from where Professor Pickle was being held, which is the Gaia manuscripts that he was researching. Obviously, Eggman must have kidnapped Pickle and stolen these, and that's how he discovered about all this stuff in the first place. Blah, blah, blah. Everyone gets back to Professor Pickle's place, and he now gives a bunch of exposition of what the whole deal is with this game. For many years, he has been researching the Gaia manuscripts, which tell of a time where a disaster befell the entire planet, where it once again was broken into multiple pieces. And apparently this has happened to the Earth many, many times in the past. And this is caused by a being that lives in the Earth's core called Dark Gaia. Apparently Dark Gaia is not fully formed, as Eggman awakened it prematurely, and so it is possible that they might be able to stop Dark Gaia's awakening by restoring power to the Chaos Emeralds and in turn restoring the pieces of the planet. According to the Gaia manuscripts, there are temples all around the planet that Sonic can go to and bring the Chaos Emeralds where they can have their power restored. And it's not long before our heroes find the first of the Gaia temples, where a pedestal rises up and Sonic places one of the Chaos Emeralds there, which restores its power and puts that piece of the planet back together. So now our goal is clear. Sonic has to go around the entire world finding all the Gaia temples and restoring power to the Chaos Emeralds, which will in turn restore the planet back to normal. And this is a very big thing in Sonic Unleashed. You know, the game's alternate title, Sonic World Adventure, that is alluding to the general theming and aesthetic of what this game is trying to do. It is a globe-trotting adventure, Sonic exploring the entire world. This is why all the different zones in this game are themed after real-world locations, to give you that feel of traveling around the world. And I think that is an absolutely fantastic idea for a Sonic game, because it fits Sonic's character perfectly. You know, he's all about exploring the world, so a whole game that leans into that, that's just absolutely perfect for Sonic. And there's a lot about this game that really, really leans into this whole idea. Not just the fact that all the different places we go to are different countries around the world, but also many other aspects of things, like you can buy souvenirs at the shops in the game, and even the fact that Sonic eats chili dogs in this game I actually think serves pretty well to add even more to the theming of this game. Because this is the first time they have ever acknowledged Sonic's favorite food being chili dogs in a Sonic game, because that wasn't a part of the Sonic game continuity prior to this. They decided to incorporate that into the games with Unleashed, and in this case, I actually think this is a really smart decision, particularly for Unleashed, because it ties well into the theming of the game with the hot dog missions, where you can go around the world to all these different hot dog vendors who will sell Sonic chili dogs of all these different types. Because, you know, that's a thing that some people do. They'll have their, like, favorite food, and they go to a bunch of places, and they order that same food to, like, compare who has the best version of it. And so, you know, if you're doing a whole story about exploring the whole world and seeing what it has to offer and learning about the culture and the foods of different places, having a favorite food that Sonic likes to eat and trying it at all these different locations, it just adds even further to that idea of this being a globe-trotting adventure. And of course, that feeds into the general high-level ideas of what's going on here, with the planet being broken into pieces, Sonic restoring it, and the big monster here being Dark Gaia in the Gaia manuscripts, Gaia obviously meaning Earth and all that. They knew exactly what they were doing with this game, and I think it all comes together very well. That said, we've actually covered most of the story of Sonic Unleashed already, because Sonic Unleashed doesn't really have that much story to it. There are a lot more cutscenes in the game, but they're generally not really of much substance. A lot of them are just Sonic and Chip putting more emeralds back in pedestals in the temples and restoring more of the planet. not a whole lot actually happens in Sonic Unleashed plot-wise. It's actually fairly light on story, and there is a big reason for that, and I presume that reason is because of the Sonic game that came out 2 years prior, Sonic 06. Because ever since Sonic Adventure, the Sonic games have been getting very, very story-focused, and 06 was the most story-heavy Sonic game of them all. And of course, with that game being a giant fucking mess, then Sonic Team wanted to distance themselves away from Sonic 06 as much as possible, not just in the core gameplay, but also in the tone and the story. And so, a big, heavy, epic, dramatic story like Sonic 06 has? Nah, we don't want to do that here with Unleashed. We want to tell a smaller, simpler story with not nearly as much going on. Which I am personally thankful for. I would rather a more simple and straightforward but effective story for Sonic than the really convoluted, all-over-the-place stories that they did in a lot of their previous games. You know, this is the game where they did away with what at this point was a fairly iconic way of doing Sonic storytelling with the multiple different stories and you see things from different perspectives. That is gone here. All you do is follow Sonic through everything. And really, this is the first time in a long time where a Sonic game has been solely focused on Sonic, with him being the only playable character. Every Sonic game previously, other than Shadow the Hedgehog, was always adding more characters, more playable characters, more stuff going on, more shit all over the place, and this is the game where they decided to rein things back and say, let's not just keep adding more and more and more endlessly. Let's actually try to trim things down here, which I think was a smart move, because a lot of times when they had so much shit going on in previous Sonic stories, it was way too much, and a lot of it was just shoved in there for no reason. And ultimately, I think most of the time, a lot of that convolution was to the detriment of the stories rather than to their benefit. They did have a lot more substance to them, and there are a lot of those stories that I do like to varying degrees, but ultimately I do think that a lot of those stories were kind of missing the mark or overdoing it or had problems in one way or another. So I do agree with the decision to kind of simplify things and pull back on story focus a decent amount with this game. You know, that's something I've said before with, like, the Rush games. I like the more simple, straightforward, character-focused stories as opposed to the giant, convoluted ones with a million fucking characters. However, this game doesn't just endeavor to simplify the storytelling of Sonic and kind of cut the fat, but it also kind of tries to erase the past a little bit. At least my reading of it is like that. Because if you think of the Sonic stories from every previous Sonic game, they were all building off of the last one. You know, there is a clear through line from Sonic 1 all the way up to Shadow the Hedgehog, even though there's a lot of continuity errors and contradictions and stuff. But still, each of those stories was building off the stories of the previous games. And 06 is in kind of a weird place where it both does build off of previous games, yet at the same time feels very separate from them in many ways. So I don't know where the fuck that game falls. But Sonic Unleashed is the first time for a mainline Sonic game where really this has nothing to do with anything that's happened in any of the previous Sonic games. This game could take place like right after Sonic Adventure 1 and absolutely nothing in the game would contradict that. And I feel that too was a deliberate effort by Sonic Team as a way to distance themselves from Sonic 06 and what that game was doing. All those bigger, convoluted Sonic stories that were always building off of the last one, like, no, this is nothing to do with those, this is entirely separate. And you can feel that in many ways when you just look at what happens during this game's story. I mean, first of all, this whole idea of, like, Gaia and the Gaia temples, Dark Gaia, and how the Chaos Emeralds are, like, linked to the planet itself and these Gaia temples. How does any of this fit into Sonic Adventure's lore with Chaos and the ancient Echidna civilization? Like, I thought Chaos was the one that was linked to the Chaos Emeralds, but now apparently it's this Gaia creature and all these Gaia temples that are all around the planet. How does any of that fit together? Like, are Gaia and Chaos related? The answer here is that we're not even thinking about Chaos in the context of this story. There is no Chaos here. That doesn't exist. All of that ancient Echidna civilization stuff, that is not part of the vision of what Sonic Unleashed is. Same goes for many things, like where the fuck is Shadow during all of this? This is definitely something that he would get involved in. And where's Gun for that matter? You would think that the entire planet splitting apart would definitely be a matter that would be addressed by the world military, but they are entirely absent from this game with no mention whatsoever because they just don't exist in this game. We're just not thinking about any of that stuff. None of that is related. You can also see that in how Tails is treated in this game, where now he's cowering to all these Dark Gaia creatures, which really does not at all line up with Tails' character at this point in the series. After everything he's been through in SA1, SA2, Heroes, all of that, he should definitely not be afraid of a couple of monsters after all the things that he's done. But this game has nothing to do with any of those games. It is completely ignoring them. Sonic Unleashed falls into this weird gray middle area where it's kind of almost like a reboot of the Sonic series, even though it's not explicitly a reboot, but it just makes no references to any previous Sonic game at all, and it actively goes out of its way to avoid things that we've seen in previous Sonic games. It is very deliberately trying to be an unrelated one-off to everything else, and honestly, I can respect that. I prefer that to the, like, fake, broken, shitty, canon, non-canon, whatever the fuck that we've seen in so many previous Sonic games, where they try to act like they all connect together in one continuity, but in reality, when you look at them, they absolutely do not. Sonic Unleashed has no pretense about that. It's like, yeah, I have nothing to do with any previous Sonic game, I don't give a fuck, and I'm saying that right up front, and because of that, I'm on board with it. I'm like, hell yeah, this has nothing to do with any previous Sonic game. It's basically, in its own little pocket continuity, completely detached from everything else. The only things that it's built on top of are the fundamental ideas of the Sonic series. You know who Sonic is, you know who Eggman is, you know what their deal is, you know who Tails is, you know who Amy is, and that's all you need. Boom, there you go. Cause, oh yeah, Amy's also in this game, and she's entirely inconsequential and really doesn't even need to be here, so I didn't even feel it was worth mentioning her. Which really, I feel the same way about Tails in this game. Like, he absolutely does not need to be here whatsoever. He serves absolutely nothing to the plot at all. He only exists to be the guy that flies the plane. That's really all he does. He's our connection to Professor Pickle, that's how we discover him, but you could have very easily just had it be that Sonic and Chip run into one of the Professor's assistants that was researching a nearby Gaia temple or whatever the fuck, and do the exact same thing. In fact, that would probably be better, because then we wouldn't have Tails cowering here, and also, Jesus Christ, the convenience of Sonic running into Tails here is unbelievable. This is something that really annoys me when we have, like, overwhelmingly convenient bullshit happen in a story where Sonic fell from space to a random place on Earth, and it just so happens to be that Tails was right nearby. Like, come on, dude, that is fucking stupid. That is some lazy goddamn writing right there. I fucking hate that shit. By the way, while we're talking about Tails and his plane, what is the whole deal with the tornado in all these fucking Sonic games? Because it's constantly changing all the time, and I have no idea what anything is. Because in this game, he refers to it as his tornado, and it's red like the Tornado 1, but the Tornado 1 is Sonic's plane. However, I get the impression with many later Sonic things that they kind of just forgot that the Tornado was Sonic's, because Tails is always associated with the Tornado, even though it's not his plane. But regardless of that, this can't be the Tornado, because that was destroyed in Sonic Adventure, or I guess it could, because this is completely unrelated to Sonic Adventure. But at the same time, on the actual texture of the plane, it says Tornado 3, so we have, you know, the first tornado that was destroyed, the second tornado that Tails built in SA1, and then this could be the Tornado 3 that he built a new one that was also red. But does that mean that the tornado we see in Sonic Rush Adventure is also the Tornado 3? I don't know. And to make things even more confusing, in the English dub, Tails refers to this plane as the Tornado 1, though he doesn't call it that in Japanese, so that's just a translation error. Plus, also the Cyclone in Sonic Adventure 2, the texture on that says Tornado 3 as well. So is this really the Tornado 3, or is it the Tornado 1, or is it some other fucking thing? I have no fucking clue, because they don't give a shit about any of this stuff. Really, the answer here is they don't give a flying fuck and they don't think about this stuff at all, and they just wanted to go with the red plane because that's more iconic to Sonic. That's really all the thought they put into this. Which just even furthers my thought that this game is basically entirely detached from the rest of the Sonic continuity. Oh yeah, another thing worth mentioning about Tails in this game is I hope you don't like seeing him do anything, because he's not gonna do anything ever again in any Sonic game. Whereas before, he went through a bunch of arcs of gaining self-confidence and becoming independent and being able to do things. All of that is completely gone for the rest of the Sonic series. Now Tails is the guy that stands around and exposits what the hell's going on, does technobabble, and sits there holding his Wii U gamepad. I talked about this a little bit in a previous video, but again, why is Tails not doing anything in this game? He flies the plane to get you around from place to place, but then he just stands around and does nothing for the rest of the game. Like, I know why from game purposes he's not playable in this game, but character-wise, he should be following Sonic along on all these adventures, contributing just as much, but instead he does nothing because we want to focus purely on Sonic with all these games, as that was another thing that they wanted to do to get away from 06, is no more other playable characters, just Sonic from now on. Which I definitely think is a huge overreaction to the negative criticisms of 06 and a lot of the 2000s games. We like playing as other characters, it's just we don't like doing it when it sucks. And a knock-on effect of the fact that Sonic is the only playable character in every future Sonic game is that no one else can do anything besides Sonic in the actual stories, which is fucking stupid. Many people have suggested the idea of, oh, why couldn't the Werehog have been Knuckles? That would have been cool, but the entire reason for the Werehog is so that way we could have alternate gameplay, but you don't have to play as someone other than Sonic, because they wanted to get away from multiple playable characters because they were traumatized by 06 and believed that that was terrible because everyone at this time was complaining about all of Sonic's stupid friends. And so because of that, pretty much every other Sonic character suffers greatly for this besides Sonic, which is why I think it just would have been better if Tails and Amy weren't in this game at all. Though, to be fair, while I do say that Amy contributes nothing to this game's plot, which is true, she does do one thing, which is she mistakes the Werehog for Sonic and, you know, does the whole thing of like, oh, Sonic, mistaking him for being Sonic. You know, it's like the running gag. She did it with Shadow, she did it with Silver, and now she ended up doing it with Sonic and not even knowing it. But the real thing that comes from this is that once she leaves and thinks that Sonic is somebody else, then Sonic is a little bit upset by that. Which is really the only moment in the game that they give us a moment to understand that Sonic doesn't like being the Werehog. Because in every other scene, he doesn't really seem to mind it very much. So I think this is an effective scene just in the sense that it gives us a feeling that Sonic wants to go back to normal. Although I think they could have done this a lot better because, like, there's no mention of the fact that Sonic is slow when he's the Werehog, which would have been a great opportunity for him to not like the loss of his speed. And on that topic, actually, a funny little weird thing with the Werehog is, you know, he's like the big, burly, tough Sonic transformation. He's all strong. But in reality, like, in the gameplay, the way it's conveyed to us, the Werehog is just inferior to normal Sonic in every single way, including strength. Because in the gameplay, you have to fight a bunch of Eggman robots doing all these combos and punches and stuff in order to kill them. Whereas normal Sonic can just barrel through these enemies in an instant. So really the Werehog is just like a weakened form of Sonic, which I guess that works, that makes sense. You know, he's weakened by Dark Gaia energy, I guess. Anyway, that's enough rambling about other things for now. Let's get back to talking about Sonic Unleashed story. One thing that's worth mentioning here is that eventually Professor Pickle gives Sonic and Chip a camera to take pictures with, and eventually they realize that during the nighttime, some people are possessed by Dark Gaia creatures. and that they can use their camera and the flash of its light to exorcise those creatures out of those people in order to free them from Dark Gaia's dark influence. That's what was happening to the Ice Cream Man earlier. During the day, he's perfectly fine, but at nighttime, he's possessed by a Dark Gaia creature, which is why he's so negative and pessimistic at night. Dark Gaia is a creature who is intrinsically linked to nighttime, and so its power can only manifest once night falls. Which, if you haven't figured it out by that point, that is why Sonic turns into the Werehog, is because he also has Dark Gaia energy inside of him, which comes out during the nighttime. And one of the neat details that actually hints toward this is the Dark Gaia creatures themselves, because you can see in their attacks many of them have stretchy limbs, just like the Werehog. That is part of the power inherent to Dark Gaia, and so since Sonic has Dark Gaia energy right now, he gets some of those properties. That's a nice attention to detail. I like that quite a bit. Another thing that's worth noting is that anytime Sonic and Chip make it to one of the Gaia temples, the thing that raises the pedestal to put the Chaos Emerald on it is actually Chip's little bracelet that he's wearing. It like glows, and that's what summons up the pedestal, obviously hinting to the fact that Chip is somehow related to all of this Gaia stuff. And of course that pays off later in the story, where Sonic and Chip have restored most of the pieces of the planet back together. But before they go into this one Gaia temple, Chip is starting to feel very hesitant. He has a bad feeling, he's worried, he's nervous, he's afraid of something, but he's not exactly sure what. And once he and Sonic go into the temple, they catch a look at this big mural here, and when Chip goes to touch it, then he gets sucked inside. And here, Chip has a bit of a vision quest sequence where he recovers something very, very important.
思い出したよ全部チップの本当の名前はライトガイア。昼と光の力を受けて星を再生に導くもの。ダークガイアからこの星を守るのが役目だったんだ、けどエッグマンが無理やりこの星を壊してダークガイアとチップを叩き起こしたんだ。それでダークガイアはバラバラになってチップも混乱して役目がわからなくなっちゃった。今は本当の目覚めの時じゃないから。
目覚めの時？
ダークガイアは何百万年もかけて成長してこの星を壊す。そしたらチップがそれを癒す。チップたちはそれを繰り返してきたんだ、はるか昔から。
じゃあお前は何百万年もずっと眠ってたっていうのか？
うん、ずっとね。
お前のおかげだったんだな、チップ。夜になってこんな姿になっちまっても俺は他のみんなのように心までは変わらない。それはお前が守ってくれてたからじゃないのか？
チップは何もしてない。ソニックが変わらないのはソニック自身の心の力さ。
俺の？
そう、何があっても絶対迷わない。夜と闇の誘惑に心が負けることもない。そんなソニックだからチップは助けてもらいたかったんだ。楽しかったよ、世界中旅して回って。チップはずっとこの星の中にいたけどこの星のこと何も知らなかった。綺麗な景色も美味しいものも素敵な人たちも何にも。だから出会えて嬉しかった。ソニックがチップの記憶探してくれたの。ずっと忘れないから。ありがとうソニック。さよなら。
ヘイ！一人でどこ行こうってんだ？
だってチップの記憶戻ったし、ここから先はチップの役目で、ソニックが一緒に来る理由なんて何もないし。
友達を手伝うのに理由なんているのかい？
ありがとうソニック。
Do I even need to explain why I let that cutscene just play out? Of course I did. It's obviously the best cutscene in the game. However, it does kind of fall flat a little bit in one particular way, which is that Chip is not as strong of a character as he should be to make that scene really land. Because, I mean, first of all, we haven't even really spent that much time with Chip, and when you play the game, he doesn't really do anything or contribute much, like, during the gameplay, or even when you're talking to NPCs in the hub world and stuff. You kind of really forget about him when you're not in the cutscenes, and when you are in the cutscenes, he's not really very likable or entertaining or amusing. They just use a lot of really juvenile humor with him, of him wanting food, and lots of, you know, very, very basic gags that really do not land. Chip is just not a very amusing character. You know, I see what they're trying to do with him, that he's like super duper innocent, he's like a young child, and so that's why he's always doing these distracting things, not really taking things seriously, not really paying attention to what's going on while the quote-unquote grown-ups are talking. But that doesn't really make for a character that I'm personally gonna get very attached to. Like, I really don't give a fuck about Chip at all. And so now when you get this whole payoff of everything, it doesn't really come together in the way that it should, with him, like, realizing that he's Light Gaia, and now he wants to go do everything on his own. But then Sonic's like, yeah, I'm gonna help you. And he's like, you don't have to. And he's like, I want to help out a friend. But we haven't really gotten very much that has allowed us to feel out their friendship, because there's been very little story leading up to this point. This is nearly the end of the game, and basically nothing has happened to make us feel Sonic and Chip getting to know each other better, growing a bond, getting more familiar with each other, all that stuff. You know, the kinds of things that they did really well in Black Knight with Sonic and Caliburn are totally absent here, and so it really doesn't work. Like, everything that Chip talks about here, about how he never really knew what the planet was like, but now going on this big adventure with Sonic all around the world, meeting all these people and seeing all these things, now he really appreciates the planet that he's a part of more. Yet that doesn't really reflect the experience we had as a player. We did not see Chip really enjoying and learning about what the world is like. You're just playing through a video game the whole time, and Chip is there, and you pay no attention to him, and then suddenly this cutscene happens, and you're like, oh, suddenly now Chip is like this really endearing character out of nowhere, when you really didn't give a fuck about him at any point leading up to this. It really doesn't work to make this pay off. However, I'm kind of willing to forgive it, because the strength of this scene is just that good, and from this point on, Chip as a character I do think works pretty well now that he has like a combination of his original memories and the experiences that he shared with Sonic. Like, now Chip works as a character from this point on, but leading up to this point, he totally doesn't, and that is a serious problem. It is by far the biggest problem that Sonic Unleashed has. It's an issue with the fact that this game has so little story. You know, I understand them wanting to reduce the emphasis on story that we had in, like, 06 and stuff, but they overdid it here, because we completely miss out on everything that's supposed to make us like Chip, and so it just kind of feels like this is coming out of nowhere. But even then, the little bit of Chip that we do get is really not very endearing at all, so even if we got more of him, I don't necessarily know if we would have liked him. Like, the choice of character, what they wanted to do with Chip, I get it. You know, his before and after regaining his memories, there's supposed to be a big contrast there, that he's just this cute little fairy guy that just likes eating, and he's basically a little kid. And then, you know, it turns out that he's actually super important and has the biggest responsibility in the entire world. You know, there's supposed to be that contrast there, but it really doesn't work too well, because the Chip that we have for the majority of the story is just like, bleh. It is by far the biggest problem with this game's story, but like I said, I'm kind of willing to look past it, sort of, because everything else in this game's story works so well for the most part, so it's like, okay, one part of the story was a little bit weak, but alright, that's fine. I mean, it's not fine, I wish it was better, but I'll take it. I'll live with it. Anyway, at this point in the story, all but one piece of the planet has been restored, and where is that final piece? Well, let's talk about what Eggman has been up to this whole time, as you don't really see him very much throughout the events of Sonic Unleashed, because he is busy with something very important. As he stated at the beginning of the game, he wanted to use Dark Gaia's power in order to build Eggman Land, and that is what he is working on throughout the entirety of the game. You cut back to him a couple of times throughout your playthrough of Sonic Unleashed to get updates on how things are going, and to be honest, once again, nothing of real consequence here happens. It's mainly just a lot of comedic stuff that, once again, really falls flat in this game. It's worth mentioning that the writer of this game was Kyoko Yoshimura, who worked on Sonic 06 and was also one of the writers of Sonic X. And you can see a lot of her writing in the way that Sonic Unleashed story is told. One of those ways is an influx of comedy into the series that really doesn't work. That is something that is very prominent in Sonic X, and there is a lot of it here in Sonic Unleashed, which, when you really think about it, any of the previous Sonic games outside of the Riders games, they're not really funny. They have an amusing moment here and there, but really, comedy has never really been a thing in the Sonic series up to this point. But now, all of a sudden, with this new writer in charge, there is an attempt to really put an influx of comedy into Sonic, and it really doesn't work at all, and honestly, I don't really feel it's appropriate for the series, but it's what they wanted to do, I guess, and bleh. That's the other part of the story that I think really doesn't work, is all the failed comedy. There's like one joke in the game that I think is somewhat amusing, but that's about it. And it's probably part of the reason Chip fails so much as a character, as he is the comic relief, so he tells a lot of jokes that are just fucking lame and not funny at all. And sadly, Eggman gets that as well. It's unfortunate because, in general, I think that Kyoko Yoshimura gets Sonic very well. You know, like, that scene with Sonic and Chip was absolutely incredible, and we'll get to it later, but I think the themes of what this game is doing is absolutely perfect for Sonic. It's just, could you not, with the terrible comedy, just don't even do that, please? That would be much better. But anyway, the gist of what's going on with Eggman is that he has been collecting all of the pieces of Dark Gaia that were scattered around the planet because Dark Gaia was incomplete. It was still gestating in between its cycles of breaking apart the planet. With his laser, Eggman awakened it early, and so it broke into pieces all around the world, and that is what all the Dark Gaia creatures are. They are pieces of Dark Gaia. And so Eggman has been collecting these pieces in order to fuel his construction of Eggman Land. And that is where the final Gaia Temple is located, underneath the completed Eggman Land. And this is just a cool thing because Eggman has talked about wanting to build Eggman Land for so long in the Sonic series, and now he's finally succeeded at it. He's finally done it. He's built Eggman Land. And that is just a really good way to raise the stakes of this game towards the end, of like, oh shit, Eggman has succeeded. You know, at the beginning of the game, he won. He defeated Sonic and managed to achieve his goals, and here they are. Here's the fruits of his labor. He finally managed to build what he was trying to build in so many Sonic games. Even if this game is unrelated to previous Sonic games, clearly this is supposed to be a big deal that Eggman has finally constructed Eggman Land. And I think that the payoff of Eggman Land is really well done because the actual level itself is the biggest, longest, hardest Sonic level in the entire series. This level is infamous for how fucking insanely hard it is, and what place better to get that kind of reputation than Eggman Land, the fruition of what Eggman has been trying to do for so long in so many Sonic games. It's absolutely perfect. Eventually, Sonic and Chip do manage to get their way through all of Eggman Land and restore the final Chaos Emerald, which puts the last piece of Earth back in its normal place, which means everything is taken care of, and our heroes celebrate their victory and success. However, things are not done just yet, as Eggman bursts through with this new robot of his. He explains that through collecting all of the energy of Dark Gaia from around the world, he was able to help Dark Gaia reach its complete form again, and using that, he was able to harness Dark Gaia's energy to create this robot here. So I guess presumably this is like the most powerful Eggman mech ever. I assume that's what we're supposed to be getting from this, but, you know, it's basically just another big final boss fight against Eggman in a big robot. Been there, done that. But what is different about this fight with the Egg Dragoon is that Sonic is fighting with Eggman here while they plummet down deep below the Gaia Temple and Eggman Land, and they keep falling and falling and falling as the battle goes on until they end up at the Earth's core. Sonic manages to defeat Eggman, but you know who hangs out at the Earth's core? And like so many Sonic games, Eggman tries to command this eldritch monstrosity that is way above his capabilities, and the thing just completely ignores him and bats him away. And now Sonic somehow needs to deal with this giant fucking demon monster thing. But first, that monster thing wants its dark energy back as it pulls the energy inside of Sonic out of him, returning even more of Dark Gaia's strength back to him. Meanwhile, Sonic no longer has the werehog in him, so he reverts back to normal. And that is something very weird and uncommon for Sonic. We do not often see situations where Sonic is the one telling people to run away because there's no hope. Normally, he's the one defying those odds. You know, this is a situation where even Sonic is worried that things might not work out here. Just another way that they're trying to make this feel bigger and more epic than any Sonic story ever has before. However, Sonic is not alone here. Chip is still here, Light Gaia is still here, and he uses his power to summon all of the various Gaia temples from around the world to this location. I don't exactly know why the final piece of the Earth isn't flush with the rest of the planet already, but whatever. What's important is that all of these temples come together and turn into like a giant golem mecha thing that Chip controls with his Light Gaia power. Meanwhile, Sonic regains consciousness, and this is it, the final battle, the final confrontation. Sonic and Chip together against Dark Gaia. And more than any previous Sonic game, I think they really land the big epic final climax fight with the giant demon monster thing here in Sonic Unleashed. Because this final boss fight is big and long and elaborate with lots of different types of gameplay and a whole bunch of shit going on, and I think it's very effective. First you have gameplay where you control Chip and the Gaia Colossus, and you have to close the distance on Dark Gaia, and then you take control of Sonic as he runs along the Gaia Colossus in order to land attacks on Dark Gaia himself. And that alone is a really cool idea, that this big golem mecha thing that Chip is controlling turns into a level that Sonic plays running along it in order to fight the giant monster. That's just super awesome, it's a great idea, and it really works well as like these two working together to beat this monster. However, as it starts to look like Sonic and Chip are overcoming Dark Gaia, then Dark Gaia starts releasing its dark energy around the entire planet, engulfing the whole thing in night and darkness, which is the sign of the end of the world that Dark Gaia is supposed to bring. We see now that Dark Gaia has truly achieved its complete form in this really, like, this is full-on some Lovecraft nightmare shit over here. Out of all the big giant monster demon creatures that Sonic has fought for his final boss, there's nothing that's been quite as monstrous as this thing, if you ask me. And now to deal with this, Sonic takes the 7 Chaos Emeralds from the temples that comprise the Gaia Colossus and uses them to transform into Super Sonic, of course. And then we get a fun little moment here where it mimics the final sequence of Sonic 3 and Knuckles, the first time we ever did the big Super Sonic boss fight, where we have Sonic flying toward the boss, having to avoid a bunch of asteroids collecting rings along the way. Nice little reference there, bringing it all back to the first time we ever did this. However, once Sonic gets up to Dark Gaia, then there's this barrier that he can't get past. However, he is still not alone here.
ここは任せてソニック。
おいチップ何をする気だ。チップすごいな。
ダークガイアはチップが引きつける。今のうちにこのシールドをなんとかして。あのでかい。
Oh my god, I can't believe what's happening here. They're doing the thing. They're doing the Sonic final boss thing, where you're fighting the big epic giant monster thing, and we go crazy with the final climax of the game. And it's actually working. I'm actually getting hyped from this sequence. This has never worked this well before in a Sonic game. So many Sonic games try to do this kind of thing, you know, the big epic final finale boss fight thing. Yet so many of them fall flat to me for one reason or another. Or they're just not that particularly strong, but here we are in the final boss fight of Sonic Unleashed, and it's totally working. For the first time, it is all coming together without any major issues here. And I think one big factor of this is the music. The music in this game is absolutely incredible, but this one particular song here, this is the main theme of the game, Endless Possibilities, which is your typical butt rock Sonic music. And normally for the final boss fights, they play the butt rock main theme of the game. But for Sonic Unleashed, they actually decided to do something else, and instead we get the orchestral version of the main theme, which is just fucking awesome. It's super good, super cool, it just makes things feel all that more epic, and you know, it reminds you of the adventure that you've been on this entire time that got you up to this moment. Fucking using an orchestral version of a game's main theme is like an easy cheat way to have an extremely effective and emotionally gripping climax. Technically, Sonic 06 also did this, but that game was a giant dumpster fire, so its finale totally squandered the amazing music that was there. But here, this actually completely works and comes together, and it's fantastic. You know, I've complained about them doing the Supersonic Final Boss minigame thing over and over in so many Sonic games because it doesn't really work as some special surprise thing that you get at the end of the game when it becomes so predictable and formulaic that you can see it coming at the end of every single game. But here in Unleashed, I'm willing to forgive that because this is by far the best they have ever executed this idea. In fact, they do it so well that I'm really not bothered by the fact that so many following Sonic games don't do the Supersonic Climax. Because how the fuck are you gonna top this? Like, this is doing this idea just about as well as you possibly could, unless you're gonna go a whole insane other level, even ridiculously higher, which they could certainly do, but I wouldn't want that for, like, the very next game after this. You know, some time away from this idea is actually good, I think. Like, it makes it feel special again when we finally get it. Like in the case of Sonic Unleashed, I think this would have been even more effective if we weren't constantly getting supersonic finales at the end of every single Sonic game. That would make this hit even harder. This whole climax sequence is definitely where this game's attempt to be the Sonic movie really, really pays off. All of that cinematic flair building up to this final moment, it really all does come together in a fantastic way. This delivers on what that original idea at the end of Sonic 3 and Knuckles was supposed to be. This is it. This is the supersonic climax. Anyway, of course, Sonic and Chip work together to defeat Dark Gaia, and that's that. The day is saved, the darkness subsides, and everything goes back to normal. We check in on Eggman briefly, who everything has completely fallen apart for him, and he gets mocked by his little robot, and we just end with a gag of Eggman once again. That's the one joke in this game that I do think does work, is that little robot making fun of Eggman. That's actually pretty okay. Unfortunately, that little robot led to much, much worse things in the future. Of course, we check up on Professor Pickle and Amy and see how they're doing, and Professor Pickle has some very important stuff to say here.
しかし、我々は眠らねば生きてはいけないというのもまた真理です。 世界には光と同様に闇と夜もまた必要なもの。滅ぼしたのではなく、ただ休ませ眠りにつかせたのかもしれません。数百万年の時をかけて闇は育ち、光に癒されまた眠る。それがダークガイアとライトガイアのバランス、あるいはそのバランスこそがこの星の意志そのものなので。
I have some things to say about that, but first let's finish with the final cutscene of the game.
Sonic, 君は生きて。
チップ。おっつあいつあ
忘れないよ、ずっと。この大地と共に君のそばにいるから。
And there you have it, the story of Sonic Unleashed. A wonderful little bookend there, with Sonic falling in the exact same way that he did at the beginning of the story, getting his face in the dirt, seeing Chip, but then, oh, he's actually not there. Really, really lovely ending, and overall, I love the story of Sonic Unleashed. It is probably my favorite Sonic story overall. I think it does an incredibly good job of encapsulating everything that Sonic is about. I know a lot of people like to give Black Knight that credit, and I think Black Knight does a really good job as well, but I think Unleashed is quite a bit stronger, actually, as it brings back a lot of the original story concepts of what Sonic is. Stuff that has been absent from the Sonic series for quite a while. Like, I don't know if you've ever realized this, but Sonic Unleashed does pull things back to that original environmental theme of Sonic. Think about it, what is this game's story about? Eggman destroys the planet and breaks it into pieces and wants to use the planetary energy, the energy of Dark Gaia, to fuel the creation of Eggman Land. It's like some fucking FF7 shit, him using the planet's own energy in order to achieve his goals. And it's just really nice to see this kind of stuff again, because this has been totally absent from the Sonic series for so long, even though it was one of the founding ideas that Sonic was built on. And I think it's used pretty well, because it's not what the main theme of the game is, it's just kind of like a background thing, it's just a flavor that adds something to the game that really makes it feel appropriate for Sonic. Because with Eggman breaking the planet into pieces to harvest its energy, that then gives Sonic motivation to go on his big world-spanning adventure, which is what the game is really trying to focus in on. That idea of Sonic going around the whole world and seeing all of these different places, and all these different peoples, and all these different cultures. The only unfortunate things about the story of Sonic Unleashed is the really shitty comedy that just falls flat, and the inability for the game's story to make you care about Chip and Sonic's relationship. Chip just does not work as a character in the way that he should. And it's so unfortunate because I think what they're going for with Chip is absolutely fantastic. It's just that the character himself doesn't really make it work 100%. Because Chip is essentially the personification of the planet itself. You know what Chip says at the end there, that he'll always be by Sonic's side as part of the Earth. With him being Light Gaia, he basically is the Earth's consciousness, and in that way, Sonic gets to go on an adventure with the Earth. Think about Chip's amnesia. It's pretty easy to realize that the Earth broken up into pieces, and Sonic going on this adventure to put those pieces back together, that is a direct metaphor for Chip, as Chip is the Earth. Chip has lost his memory, he has amnesia, he doesn't know who or what he is. The Earth does not know what it is. And Sonic goes on this adventure with Chip and helps him remember that he's really Light Gaia, but more important than that, Sonic shows Chip what the Earth really is. It's not just a planet, it's not just a rock. It is a beautiful place with all kinds of peoples and all kinds of cultures, so many things to see and do and experience. And of course, Sonic already loves to adventure around the world and see what it has to offer. This whole theme of exploring the world is just so absolutely perfect for a Sonic story. All Sonic has to do to help Chip, to help the world, to heal it, to put it back together, is do what he wants, go on a big adventure, and this adventure, naturally, as a byproduct of him being Sonic, it is going to help the world, it is going to bring good to the world, it is going to heal the world, and in the case of Sonic Unleashed, the world here is a literal world, the planet itself, and that thus extrapolates into the people of the world. Sonic goes around and brings good to everybody. I can so easily imagine in my head this entire game's metaphor all being represented with that image of the Earth broken into pieces, and you just see that blue blur of Sonic running around the planet, putting its pieces back together, helping the world. In that way, Chip goes on to not just represent the planet, but the world and the people that comprise it. But that's not even the whole story, because there's a whole other layer to Sonic Unleashed on top of that, which is the conflict between Light Gaia and Dark Gaia. You know, light and dark, day and night. That is a big thing in this game. That's why we have Sonic and the Werehog, and that is more than just an aesthetic idea. There is something there. It's what Professor Pickle was talking about. The world needs night and darkness just as much as it does light. Naturally, light and dark represent good and bad, and you need a balance of both. Once again, Sonic wearing its Star Wars inspirations on its sleeve. And this can be interpreted in many different ways. We could just go with the surface level of like, you know, we need bad things in the world as well. You know, sadness, anger, hatred. While these are negative things, they are also important to feel these kinds of feelings. And yeah, sure, there's definitely a layer of that here. But I think it actually goes beyond that into a little bit of meta territory, because it talks about specifically the cycles of day and night, that when daytime is around, when good is around, that gives time for darkness to grow until night finally arrives. That idea that good and bad are not just necessary to have both, but that they are cyclical, that to me really screams of being thematic of the Sonic series itself. Sonic obviously represents good and Eggman represents bad, and that cycle of good comes, day comes, the morning breaks the darkness, and now we have light, we have good brought by Sonic. However, eventually, over time, the darkness will come again. Eggman, once again, is going to do something bad that's going to create another adventure for Sonic to go on, and Sonic will go on that adventure and defeat Eggman, defeat the darkness, defeat the evil, and once again bring day, bring good. In that way, Eggman is just as important as Sonic, as if there was no one bringing bad to anyone, then there would be no good for Sonic to share with people on his adventures. And of course, that spills out into our real world, that we need Eggman, we need bad, we need him to cause bad things to happen in the Sonic world, so that way Sonic has adventures to go on, so that we have games to play. That is how we connect with Sonic, that is how we connect with day, with light, with good. If there was only daytime and only light, only good, then there'd be nothing special about Sonic. What makes Sonic special, what makes him matter, what makes us care about him is that he is the light that pierces through the darkness. He is the sun that rises, that removes night from us. He is the one that brings good to people when they need it. And of course, how does he do that? He does that by going on an adventure and sharing that with us. Remember that camera that Sonic and Chip got earlier in the story? During the credits, we see all these pictures of their time together on the adventure, all the memories they had and all the experiences they shared. The camera and the photos taken with it are a manifestation of Sonic Unleashed itself, the game, the adventure that you go on. Cameras hold those moments and let us share them with each other, and you use this camera to expel the darkness from people and bring the light back to them. This is why I'm actually okay with the fact that people aren't really that bothered by the fact that the fucking planet has been broken into pieces. Because normally they are not infected with that darkness, so they are positive, they think good about these things. But it's when they're infected by Dark Gaia, when they're infected by badness, that is when they start to feel like there's no hope. But it's when Sonic shows up with his camera, the thing that's used to chronicle his adventure, that is the thing that expels the darkness from these people and brings the light back. And think about the Gaia Colossus, Chip's power. Where does it come from? It comes from all of the places that he and Sonic visited on their adventure. It's the culmination of everywhere they went together. Chip's power, the power that he uses to fight Dark Gaia here, it is the power that he gained by going on this adventure with Sonic. It is the light that Sonic shared with him. It's the experiences that they had together. When someone has an experience with Sonic, when someone plays a Sonic game, the light he shares with people, the good he shares with people, that is what people need to defeat the darkness, to defeat bad. You see what I'm saying? It all just feeds into itself absolutely perfectly. It encapsulates everything that Sonic is so well. The ending of the game too, that idea that Chip will always be with Sonic and that they'll never forget each other. You know, Sonic taking Chip's bracelet, it's like this experience that they shared with each other. It was something very, very special. And again, this is where I feel the story has its weakness, because we don't really feel that friendship between Sonic and Chip. Because I feel like the idea here is supposed to be at the end that Sonic and Chip had become best friends. Now you might say that, well, not really, because Tails is Sonic's best friend. However, I would argue with that. Because while Sonic does care about his friends very dearly, Sonic is someone that is more than okay with being by himself. And if you look at Sonic's behavior over the many Sonic games, it's very clear that as much as Sonic does care about his friends, there is one thing that he cares more about than any of them, and that is going on adventures. And Sonic can't go on any adventures without a ground to run along. Without the planet itself, Sonic has nothing. The Earth is Sonic's true best friend, and in that way, Chip is really Sonic's best friend. And remember, what does Chip represent? The world and the people that make it up. Chip is us. We are Sonic's best friend because we enable him to go on his adventures by making and playing the games that he's in. The ground that Sonic needs to run on and have his adventures, We're the ones that give that to him. Again, think about it. The Chaos Emeralds in this game, the things that give Sonic his power, how do they get their energy in this game? It's from the Gaia Temples. It's from the Earth. And the Earth is Chip, and Chip is us. We give to Sonic, and he gives back to us. We create the adventures that Sonic goes on, and through those adventures, he delivers us fun games to play with positive messages. That's why this ending here is so strong, but again, unfortunately, it just doesn't really come together in terms of the relationship between Sonic and Chip. That is the one big sour thing about this game's story that makes it frustrating. That part is just not really holding up everything else. Chip is just too weak of a character. Like, you're looking at all these photos of Sonic and Chip on their adventure, and it's like, where was any of this during the game? You don't get any of this. There's a couple of little, like, short cutscenes you can get that are, like, little fun things between Sonic and Chip, but every single one of them, again, is just about Chip eating because that's his character, because he's just a super simplistic, oh, I eat food all the time type character. Like, it sucks. In my opinion, what they really should have done with Sonic Unleashed is, like, okay, ditch Tails and Amy completely from the story and restructure things to, instead of having you running back and forth across all these different planets, have you focusing on one country at a time, and have each country have a little thing that happens with the local populace there. They do this one time in the game, kind of, where for one country the village elder has gone missing, and so Sonic goes to look for this village elder character. But it's really not much of anything, there's like nothing to this. I think that the game could have done with more stuff like this fleshed out even further, where you arrive at a town and there's something going on. There's something wrong with the people here, some kind of problem that they're dealing with. And together, Sonic and Chip solve this problem for these people, and in doing so, they get to know the people here, and they get to know the culture here. You know, they get to try the food and have the experiences of what this world has to offer, and of course, in gameplay terms, that would be you playing the levels. And then by the time you finish that country, you restore that piece of the planet, it comes back together, and the local people, their problem is solved. Once again, it could feed into that main idea of Sonic and Chip, the light bringing good to these people, solving their problems, making everything better, and then they move on to another country, and you do that, and over time, now we get to feel the growth of Chip. We get to see him learning about the world, and then everything would work so much better. Also, it wouldn't hurt to rewrite Chip a little bit so he's a little bit more of a likable character instead of, I eat things. I want to say here that I think that Kyoko Yoshimura is a really fantastic Sonic writer. I don't know if I'd say she's my favorite, but I think that overall she does a very good job. You know, Chip was a little bit weak, and the comedy in this game is stupid, but other than that, I think that everything in this story comes together so incredibly well, basically better than it ever has in any other 3D Sonic game. It might not be perfect, it might have a couple of problems here and there, but in terms of what this story is trying to do, what it's aiming for, I think is the perfect Sonic story. And that's why I like it so much, even more than the story of Black Knight, though Black Knight's story is also really great. These two stories, back to back, really make some of the best Sonic stories, and they unfortunately kind of work as a good last hurrah for actual Sonic, because not only do we have to say goodbye to Chip at the end of this game, we also have to say goodbye to Sonic, because this is the last time we're ever going to see the real Sonic in a game. After this, he gets replaced with, I don't know, somebody else, I'll tell you that. I know some people don't love how Sonic is written in this game because he's a bit boring, but that mainly comes from the fact that Kyoko typically writes Sonic actually a little bit closer to his original version, as opposed to Shiro Maekawa's interpretation of Sonic, which is actually to my preference, but I like Shiro's version of Sonic as well. In this way, we kind of get the best of both worlds with Unleashed and Black Knight. Unleashed gives us a perfect final story for the original Sonic, and Black Knight gives us an excellent final story for Adventure Sonic. Personally, Unleashed is to my preference, but I think both are really, really good. Though another way that you can interpret all this day and night good and bad theming stuff is kind of a way that I'm not too happy with. If you want to think of this in terms of the Sonic games themselves, then, you know, you gotta have the balance, day and night, good and bad. Maybe that's why they made the werehog so shitty, is because you gotta have the bad in order to be able to properly appreciate the good. Which, if that's the case, if that's what they've been going for with all these Sonic games and all the problems they've been shoving into them, then it's like, no, you don't have to do that. We don't need the bad when it comes to making a game, please. Maybe that's why all these Sonic games have such a mixed reception. Maybe that was the point. They were trying to make games that have really good parts and really bad parts in order to maintain that balance. That's what Sonic's all about, according to Unleashed, after all. Yeah, obviously I'm just joking here, but it kind of does fit in a bit of a depressing way now, doesn't it? And there you have it, the story of Sonic Unleashed, the final real Sonic story. Thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed. I'll see you next time.